fuerza ni los zapatos entran, and welcome to Shift F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is a proverb from Mexican Spanish meaning you can't force your shoes to fit.
Oh my gosh, that's true. I tried earlier today when I was putting my costume on and it didn't work. Wow. Finally, one of your sayings is sort of relevant to the current moment I'm experiencing. It was beautiful.
Yeah. You know who else shoes didn't fit? Sergio Perez. I'm Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
I'm good, man. It's Halloween night here in Northern California, and I'm deep in it, my brother. I am. It's been 4 hours. We're recording this an hour late. Thank you very much, by the way. So that we could make sure that we squeezed it in, because I had to be my daughter's 5 years old, so I'm in the eye of the storm for Halloween, and I just spent I've been for about 4 hours now either going with her from house to house, or we've just spent the past hour and a half giving candy,
answering the doorbell,
doing that whole thing. And I was also drinking for almost the entire time. So
wow.
So I'm both full of candy and Corona, not the virus, the delicious Mexican beer.
There you go.
Couldn't be more appropriate. The only thing, I guess I could have been eating some sort of delicious spicy Mexican candy or something that would have really brought it home.
Or I think a lot of the like Day of the Dead. Stuff that's all like hard sugar.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I've always loved Dia de los Muertos. Halloween is like an Irish kind of thing. It's like based on this old thing, Samhain, and all bonfires and trick or treating and all that sort of stuff. But there's this Irish comedian called Tommy Tiernan who does a great bit about how like Irish and Mexican people are incredibly similar, and like big Catholic families and all this sort of stuff. And the only reason Irish people aren't Mexican is that we're the ones that couldn't deal with the heat or something. That's the delineation. But we both have these awesome like festivals around this time of year for celebrating the dead and stuff and eating candy. What a good time.
Wow. Case in point, Pato Award.
You're right, Producer Award. Or the Mexican-Irish restaurant I've mentioned on this podcast, I think probably numerous times at this stage, the fusion restaurant that was in my town, Paddy Gonzalez, which
that's right.
only lasted for about 6 months. But
perhaps my favorite restaurant name of all time.
It's pretty on the nose, which I appreciated. I bet they had a really good stew tortada or something. I never ate that.
Rob Zachney is on assignment this week, but if you are new to this podcast, a very warm welcome to you. And if you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode that assumes no prior F1 knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 216. Also, this show would not be possible without our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release an ad-free version of the podcast, along with bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for our patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show, not support the SPO, and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. What's been going on this month, Danny?
This month, we just published our review of the BMW films. This may have been my favorite patron exclusive podcast we ever did. This was so
Is that
much
right?
fun. Oh my God, I had so much fun putting this together. I had no idea these things existed. These are the BMW short films that Clive Owen stars in, almost all of them. That were like just insane level directors, like John Frankenheimer's in there. Who else is in there? I'm trying to. It's like the candy is clogging.
Tony Scott directs one.
Right.
Guy Ritchie.
Yes, with Madonna is in that one. I guess they were trying to keep the budget down. There's a lot of super interesting stuff. They're all like 8 minutes long, and we reviewed something like, was it 10, I think, in the end?
I think 10, yeah.
So a lot of fun. So if you want to check that out, we've links to all the videos as well in the Patreon post, so you can check those out over on the Patreon. Before I mention all the incredible title sponsors, I do want to mention as well that the intro music this week was a little bit different. You might have just heard it. We don't actually play the intro music when we're recording this, so we didn't hear it. But I'm editing this later on. So I want to give a shout out to Nick Kaliznik, who put together our Shift F1 Mexico theme based off the conversation we had last week where Rob was talking about them using the full mariachi band for the theme on the official
F1 theme.
Yeah. So much appreciated, our Shift F1 Mexico theme. There will be a link in the show notes to that as well. So thank you to Nick for putting that together, and thank you to all of our incredible title sponsors: Get Rich or Die Ryan, Agave ATX, Cyphus Training, Turf SCS, at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Gordy's Army, at Talking Autos, Olivia Evans, telemetrydeck.com. Now I'm wondering what all these people dressed up as for Halloween. You didn't dress up for Halloween, did you?
I did not know.
I phoned it in. I went to Spirit Halloween about 6 hours ago, and I bought one of those dragons that looks like you're riding a dragon.
Oh, yep.
You know, like
a classic.
It's like the alien that is stealing you one as well.
Yes.
Like it's just like it's got a fan in it, and yeah, super easy. The hands were free, so I could have the Corona. All that, it was great stuff. Who knows how all these people dressed up? FTC, James Andrew Perla Adams, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foote, Abdullah Al-Thani, Jason Chadwick, Abraham Getchell, The Space Above Us podcast. Probably dressed up as an astronaut. Sorry, I play video games too much.
Too many
went straight to Astroneer. $, Snigs, Alex Goucher, Max Voltar, Circuit Demon. Probably dressed up as a beautiful pair of custom lights. Troy Stammer, Umberto Roca, William Rumpf, Irvine Clinical Research, probably dressed up as a liver or something. Lachlan the Madden Man, Jason Kelly, and M Squared Racing welcomes Ellie. Babies are fun. You get to dress them up in whatever you want. We dressed up our daughter in the first year. I think she was a chicken, and then me and my wife wore dungarees, and we were chicken farmers. It was
got it. Nice.
It was a good time.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump right in here. Danny, let me know if my microphone seems a little hot here. I thought I was peaking a little bit in the beginning. I turned it down.
You sound great. Maybe you're just excited because of all the candy you've been eating.
It may be, yes. So let's run down the grid here. We actually, we have a lot to cover here because we got Brazil to talk about. So I'm just going to get to it. Charles Leclerc on pole.
Yeah.
Here, the only repeat pole sitter in the last 12 races at this circuit.
Oh, that's crazy.
Stat. Yeah, 11. The last 11 before him were all different.
That seems particular. It doesn't seem like a track that would create that type of scenario, but I guess.
I think you might be right, but also it's that weird. It's the altitude.
Yeah.
Verstappen, only qualified third. Carlos Sainz second. He chalked it up to the Red Bull just not being as good as in the thin air. It's one of those kind of outlier tracks, right?
Yeah.
Like Singapore is kind of an outlier, like very hot street circuit, super humid, very tight. This one's just real thin, like it's just different from all the others. Fourth place, Daniel Ricciardo.
Yes.
Making his triumphant return to Mexico. He was in the car last week, but this feels more like a Daniel Ricciardo that we know.
Yeah, for sure.
Fifth place, hometown boy Sergio Perez will line up in fifth. Behind him, Lewis Hamilton, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Valtteri Bottas, and in 10th place, Zhou Guanyu, both Alfa Romeos in Q3. Zhou by the skin of his teeth because Alex Albon just barely missed out because he qualified into Q3 but had a lap time deleted for exceeding track limits. I saw the replay in real time and was like, oh, no way, he didn't. And then I looked at it on YouTube and he totally did.
Yeah, he does so well though. Albon, I think, is like whenever we do our end of season recap, he's been solid in quali and solid in racing. Like I think he's one of those drivers that has just, I don't know, he's really found his pace this year. I think it's been a fantastic year for him.
Yeah, agreed. 11th place, Pierre Gasly, ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, celebrating his 200th Grand Prix. No big deal, but this is our 250th episode.
It is, right?
Fernando Alonso, 13th place. Alex Albon, 14th. He and the driver just behind him, Esteban Ocon, both starting on the hard tires. Everybody else, except for Norris, is going to start on mediums. Kevin Magnussen, 16th. Norris is down in 17th. The only one starting on soft tires. He and some other drivers, like Stroll and Sargent, got caught out in Q1 by a rare spin from Alonso in the waning moments of the session. So Sargent didn't end up setting a time, and races at the steward's discretion. Because technically there is a rule in the rule book that says if you don't set a time within 107% of the rest of the field, then you can't race. And that's back when like cars actually did qualify.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those rules that like they only they needed it. It was like a I don't know, like a rule in case there's someone they don't want racing. You know, which hasn't been the case in like 20 years in F1. You know what I mean? Like somebody who's
or at least
shouldn't be there basically. So they have never enforced it in the modern era at all.
Tsunoda is 18th. I think if you showed up with like a real lemon and it just could not go around the track and would be a danger, they might actually do it. Maybe like
that'd be funny.
I think Williams may have been in danger of that a few years ago.
Yeah, back in the Kubica years, maybe at the tail end of that. Yeah, I maybe if somebody brought an upgrade and it was just particularly dogged and they just couldn't operate, or maybe they do it. But
or they did something weird where like this car is dangerous. I don't know. Yuki Tsunoda 18th. He I don't think we really saw a representative qualifying time for him. He didn't really qualify well. I don't know if he actually set a time. Not sure what was going on there. Maybe he got cut out again with that Alonso thing. He's 18th, Sargent's 19th, and Stroll is 20th. Those last three also had a bunch of, or at least Tsunoda and Stroll had power unit changes, or parc fermé changes, rather. So Stroll's from the pit lane and Tsunoda's starting from the back of the grid. So, Danny, do you want to take us through the start of the Mexican Grand Prix?
Sure. I mean, I guess this is a conversation about Max Verstappen and his inability to get the top time and how that was instantly irrelevant by the time they got down to the first turn. Although perhaps the same positivity cannot be put on his teammate. So when they got off, both Red Bulls had a good start. I don't know if both Ferraris had a bad start, but definitely the Red Bulls seemed to be able to get that grip a little bit sharper. And in the second phase, especially, Perez had a great charge. By the time they got down to that first right-hander on this counterclockwise circuit, a familiar sort of setting for a lot of Formula One races, this sharp right-hander. By the time they got down there, Verstappen had basically secured the front and also the inside line. So he was happy. Leclerc is sitting in the middle, and then you have Perez doing an outside line, which seems, if you look at this in isolation, like perhaps maybe not the best idea. This is actually where Verstappen got the lead in 2021, was going around the outside here. So it is viable. But also, we might be in a situation where, was it the sprint in Qatar, I want to say? I forget where this happened.
Either the sprint or the race.
This was
with Hamilton?
No. You're saying Hamilton Russell. So that I think that was the main race. And I think the sprint was the one we saw with Gasly, somebody, and Perez. Was it Hülkenberg in the middle or Magnussen? Hülkenberg, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember?
Okay.
Where there was the person on the outside does not realize this is 3 wide situation.
Yes.
And I think that's what happened here, maybe, is Perez, who
maybe
arguably Perez should know where his teammate is because he's literally come up from behind, but he's attempting to go around the outside 3 wide on this turn, and it's just not going to happen. There's not going to be a lane where he can continue to keep at pace with the Ferrari and make it through. And the sort of inevitable happens, and he turns in. He actually does turn in fairly early as well. I think you kind of need to on this one. It's a bit sharper, but he fully just gets like launched off the back of Leclerc's rear rear left, I think it was, and
it's his. Leclerc's front left hits Perez's rear right.
Yeah, on his home Grand Prix, it's like, and we'll talk about it later, I'm sure. But like, in many ways, Perez saved his career with these insanely good races, both at home and in other places at the end of the season. And we're in a situation where Perez is in danger of throwing away his career, especially with the resurgent Daniel Ricciardo, which we'll get to in a little bit. But it was just, this is not a race where Perez needs to get track position to try and get in the top three. Like, they're going to get it probably. And it just seemed particularly aggressive and unnecessarily so.
I mean, you look at it and you're like watching the onboard, I kind of get, I feel what he was feeling. Like, oh man, I just nailed this. I can do this. Right. I've seen the replay of Verstappen doing this. So Julian Palmer actually has a really good breakdown of this on F1's YouTube channel. I'll link that.
I haven't checked that out.
In the show notes. But the difference is that Verstappen he does the same move at the same corner, and he's going around the outside of two other cars. The difference is Verstappen is like brakes really, really late and is all the way in front of the car that he turns in front of. Perez starts the turn and Leclerc is just right there. Like Leclerc's front left just crunches right into Perez's side pod. And that's really, I think, what did his car in. And Perez said afterward that he didn't expect Leclerc to brake that late.
Oh.
So he thought that Leclerc was going to get out of it. And Leclerc, pole position, defending against Max Verstappen, not backing out of it. And he didn't have to. It's the rules do not state that he has to do that. So Leclerc did have to cut the corner as a result of that contact. So he gives the place back to Verstappen. Leclerc also had some front wing damage. Why don't you finish off the first lap here, Denny?
No. I think that's fair. I think he got past him. Perez did actually continue, it should be mentioned, but when they got him back to the pits, I'm guessing it was the side pod because it did get pretty torn up, although also maybe the floor. I'm trying to think who was the biggest loser. I know in the restart there was a lot of action further back, but I can't remember. Did Hamilton have a good jump, or did they all just move up a place because of Perez sort of bowing out?
I think everyone moved up. Fernando does not have a good first 3 laps, it looks like.
Oh wow. Man, what a
Hulkenberg had a great start.
Oh really?
Hulkenberg made up 4 places.
Hell yeah.
Just behind, so Leclerc does have that front wing damage. Fortunately for Ferrari, it works its way clear of his car after a short while, meaning that the stewards don't have to call him into the pits for safety reasons.
No meatball for you.
What's that?
No meatball for him. No meatball flag.
That's right. Yeah, no black and orange. Just behind Verstappen and the Ferraris, must be said, Ricciardo fighting to keep 4th place from the attacking Hamilton. Ricciardo tangling with Mercedes cars at multiple times during this race. Really, really cool to see. He manages to hang on for about 10 laps until Hamilton gets him with DRS on the main straight. Meanwhile, Ricciardo's teammate Tsunoda tries to get Magnussen at the same spot and locks up, having to bail off the track. This is, you can't always just compare 2 drivers on the same team. Like but it's really hard in situations like this where it's so stark.
Do you know
what I mean?
Yeah, this was.
Like, I don't want to be too cruel about this, but like, the difference in this race was
100%. When I was watching it, I was thinking, "Oh, we're not used to seeing an AlphaTauri there," and then I would scan down to where Tsunoda was. And he was often, I think he was in 19th for a lot of it because, like, obviously he just had a terrible qualifying, and it wasn't his fault. Like, the Alonso spin basically like ruined quali for like 5 or 6 people, right? So it's not his fault. But it was one of those. I think by like lap 30 he was up to 12th or 11th or something. So he had made it up, but it. We often talk on this podcast about like the whole, especially with new listeners or new viewers of the sport, rather, the whole, machine versus driver thing and when you can notice it. And the biggest problem with F1 is that the machines, you can only really judge 2 drivers off them. So like Perez and Verstappen is actually a really good proxy for, the Red Bull's a good car, but also Verstappen is an incredibly talented driver. That's why there's this gulf between the 2 of them. Hamilton and Bottas is probably another good one. But it is really cool seeing how much Ricciardo's getting out of this car. And just...
Well, that's my question. Is is his great performance in this race representative of his skill solely, or does it have an outsized effect in this race, or is the fact that Tsunoda just had so many unfortunate things happen to him that it makes Ricciardo look really great? Because there's one other thing that we'll get to.
Yes, unfortunately.
It's a real bummer for Tsunoda.
My answer to that right now is we don't have enough data, but if this was this race felt like the political, like the race equivalent of a swing state as it came to like the argument about the Red Bull second seat. Like it just felt like, ooh, a lot happened here. And I think the narrative for the next 2 no 3, we've Interlagos, Vegas, and then Abu Dhabi races is going to be that, and it was that's where Perez got his saved his career from ending, and we love a narrative in sport, and the narrative right now is probably going to be that regardless of how unfortunate Tsunoda was or not, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, all these guys have, except for Sargent, have a contract for next year. But we know how much that means to Red Bull.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's see here. So Verstappen, lap 19, he pits, effectively committing to a 2-stop. And then we get some Ferrari radio telling their drivers that, yep, we're going for a 1-stop, which is surprising because they usually say it in code, like, we're going plan A. But they both like, listen, we all know. Everyone knows. Yeah.
The signs, they figured out our signs. It's World Series now. We'll just, that's right. We'll use the...
Banging on... trash cans.
They just use microphones. They just have little. Do you know that with the batters now? They just use like they have like little ear things in their caps instead. They just talk to them, which I think sucks.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. It should be okay. But like F1, the most beautiful sport in the world, they should broadcast it.
There you go.
We can hear it.
Nice. Hamilton extends a little longer, pitting on lap 24. The real strategic outlier here in this race is Norris, who started on softs and pits on lap 11 after making up a few spots on or with those soft tires. Goes to hard, and by lap 29 is attacking Bottas for 9th place, getting by him on the outside as they head into the stadium. Lot of really good Norris moves in this race.
Yeah.
And a few laps later, gets Albon for 8th on the main straight with DRS. The Ferraris don't pit until lap 30 with Sainz and 31 with Leclerc. And while Sainz does have a fast stop, he comes out behind Hamilton, who pulled off an undercut by pitting earlier. But who knows, perhaps that Ferrari 1-stop would have worked if not for Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah, what happened next? Exactly. It felt like one of those races that was going to come down to the last 10 laps. It was such an up in the air tire wear battle. And then Magnussen's crash was one of those red flags.
It's a weird one.
And then it was a weird one as well. You're right. So something failed, right? I didn't read about it.
Looked like left rear suspension.
Yeah.
After going over a curb at turn 8, just propels him straight into a wall. He gets out of the car quickly, but boy, does he look shaken.
Yeah, he's lucky maybe it twisted slightly before he hit the wall, so it seemed like a lot of the energy happened at the rear of the survival cell, the monocoque, but it just made the car, the car was just blasted. I think the rear left was on fire as well by the time presumably the brakes or something, by the time he got out. But yeah, it was a safety car, and then they red flagged it fairly quick. And then what I was most surprised about was that we saw them do the thing that they seem to have been reticent to do, which is let's do a standing start again. I can't remember they brought that rule in. Was it last year at some start of last year? And we had a few of them, but then we had these dangerous standing starts. So there was a reticence then to do it with the cold tires and everything. And especially in weather, I think we had a couple of weather ones that freaked everyone out.
Yeah.
So we were doing a lot of like safety car starts and then just let them go. But they decided to do it, which I thought was cool to see. I think it's a better spectacle. Of course, safety is important, but I do think, like, especially in a race like today, where the start of the race actually ended up being very important for where track position was for the first phase of this race. I thought it was cool to at least sort of roll that dice again.
Totally. So at the restart here, we've got, and you get a free change of tires, free pit stop effectively. So it is basically a restart of the race. Verstappen first, Leclerc second, Hamilton third, then Sainz, Ricciardo, Piastri, Russell, Tsunoda, Hülkenberg, and Lando Norris in 10th. You want me to take this start, Danny, or you want to take it?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, so it seemed like there was a lot of jostling for the first 4 or 5 cars, but they ultimately ended up all going through in the order they should have done. Ricciardo had a good start though, right?
Yeah, he by turn 1 is into 5th place. I'm sorry, it's Russell that has a great start.
Okay,
from 7th to 5th, but Ricciardo doesn't really make it easy for him.
Oh, that's right. They had a little fight between like I think Russell got ahead, and then Ricciardo kind of tried to snap back on turn 2, and then Russell kind of had it by 3.
Yeah. But it's great. You know, you want to see at least some fight instead of just like, I just passed him because like it's faster. You know, but poor Norris has an atrocious start. Just gets completely swamped by the midfield and drops down to 14th place from 10th. And will basically spend the rest of the race working his way back up. Hamilton in third on medium tires, lap 40, has caught the hard tire shod Charles Leclerc and makes a gutsy pass, nearly going onto the grass on the main straight and taking second into turn 1.
He dips a lot of the right side of his car into that grass. He didn't need to either. There was space, but he just sort of did it. And it felt very dramatic. But every time they do that now, ever since that Danny Ricciardo Melbourne start, do you remember that? Where he just chewed up he hit a drain.
Oh, he ate his front wing?
Yeah, he just the whole thing got banjaxed. Every time I see a car hit the grass on the inside of a straight, I always think that's going to happen. But yeah, it was a great overtake. Well earned. And that Mercedes was looking racy, and the longer the race went on, the racier it seemed.
Yeah, you know, the other, and this is to my point, the other AlphaTauri of Tsunoda also looking racy, battling with Piastri on lap 48. They touch tires as they go through turn 1, staying close all the way through to the stadium section. But we can't have nice things. Tsunoda pulls a move remarkably similar to Perez, actually, albeit with only the 2 cars.
Turned in early.
Connects with Piastri, spins himself off the track, which may prove especially costly for the team at the end of the season if those points he had turn out to have made a difference in the constructor standings.
2 of them in the top 10.
Just kind of like a wait, why?
Why is a good point. You'd think
Yeah.
once bitten, twice shy would apply here, but it was once bitten, twice. Why? Why did you do it? It felt like it felt like he got away with it. It felt like both of them in a way got away with it the last time. Whenever you see tires touch, you're like, "Ooh, I'm glad no wishbones broke. You know, nothing happened." We used to have a lot of. I feel like the front wing to tire puncture thing doesn't happen nearly as much as it did about 10 years ago. You had these little whisker touches on the tires, and they got flats. I don't know if that's the case or not, if they're more robust or whatever, but when you see that little action they had on lap 48, you think, okay, all right, lads, like there's an overtaking spot here. It's not the trickiest one in the world, but just like bide your time. Presumably Tsunoda's not chasing down his teammate. You know, he should just like focus on this one. There's, 20 laps left. Less actually, right? 20, no, about 20 and change. So to see him do that just seemed nuts. Like in the same way Perez, it was like, you don't need to do it. Like, I don't feel like the wear was happening at that stage. Like they were toe to toe. Everyone had a relatively fresh set off the restart. Like it's not like there's some crazy strategic moment where you really need to have it happen here. At least not from my recollection. And it was just disappointing. It was just like, I feel like especially with like drivers like Tsunoda and Piastri, where generally we kind of want them to do well, it was just disappointing to see it. And yeah, Tsunoda was on the radio pretty pretty fast. Just generally shouting. I don't think he was even giving out about Oscar necessarily. I think he was just super pissed, and he got gobbled up. There was because I think Albon and Norris were not that far behind him. I think did Hulkenberg get passed as well?
Yeah, no, he goes from 8th place to 16th.
Oh boy, God, they all did. Yeah. Not much of a. I wonder if we had a bit of a DRS train thing happening here because there was a. They weren't that close, but there wasn't this massive gap. I guess the restart actually nullified it. That's probably what it was. We didn't have
the other McLaren of Norris is making moves left and right. By this time, getting by Albon again for 8th on lap 49. McLaren then swaps positions with Piastri on lap 56 to put Norris into 7th and go after Ricciardo. And by lap 60, Norris has caught Ricciardo and executes probably my favorite pass of the race on the outside as they head into the stadium section. And you've got to wake up pretty early in the morning to outbrake Daniel Ricciardo, but Norris does just that and gets up into 6th place.
It was beautiful. And you just love seeing those two fight each other. Like that's a good time. Especially because I don't know, we have to assume that Norris is in the better car there, right? It's not. It's
I mean,
we'll have to see.
Frankly,
but,
it was weird watching these AlphaTauris battle with Mercedes and McLaren and stuff.
Yeah,
it's cool. 7 laps later, Norris is attacking George Russell, and Russell has just the slightest loss of traction, and Norris pounces on him with another great move and moves into 5th.
Great little overtake. Another sort of break early, get you to any inside move. Yeah, really nice. There was a lot of great little overtaking moments at the end of this race. And then an unfortunate spin by Stroll, but I think kind of nice for all those stadium people. They need to get a little bit of action.
Hey, we'll smoke. Actually, just before that Norris move, I thought this was interesting. He got a message from his engineer saying, "We know what Russell is like. He's all or nothing. So we just have patience."
Jesus. Like after he'd overtaken him?
No, before.
Oh, okay. I was like, a bit of postscript on that. Wow. Okay. Wow. That's interesting.
I wonder what the dossiers look like for each driver.
Oh, for their yeah.
You know this from the game industry. Certain PR people will have a file on the press.
Yeah. Right.
And it can be wildly inaccurate. Right.
Yeah.
Only plays PC games.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my God! I wonder what did they say about? Did they have that? Wait, do you think F1 teams have dossiers on Formula One podcasts? What did they say about? What did they say about us? Don't know anything.
Don't know virtually anything.
No, full of candy and half cut.
I did also want to call out Ocon on lap 54, calling his shot like Babe Ruth, saying over the radio, "You can say to Haas that I'm going to go for it, so they better get ready."
What? I 100% missed this. Are you serious?
Yeah. Sadly for him, Hulkenberg defends well on that particular move.
Wow. But he got him eventually, right? Because the Alpines were both ahead of Hulkenberg by the end.
That is true. Yes.
So it happened eventually. Wait, am I crazy? Did the Alfa Romeos have good qualifying?
Yes, they qualified 9th and 10th.
Yeah, I was surprised by that, and then equally surprised when they plummeted. Maybe not surprised, dismayed. Maybe I was just full of this optimism. But I guess
they pulled a Haas.
It's tricky, right? Because in the past we had teams that were just not doing very well that were at the back. Like Williams were just not really doing it, and they were at the back. Whereas now everyone's kind of doing all right. So even the team that's doing all right, but not doing all right the least ends up being in the back. But Williams.
It is nice to not have it be a given that a certain team is going to be in the back.
That's true.
Because we had that for a long time with Williams, with McLaren, with cars like Manor and Caterham and stuff.
Yeah, there's a little bit of movement there. Even the Haas's and Haas have had a fairly off and on season, but they've been on for a decent amount. It was nice to see Alfa Romeo do decent in quality, but obviously it wasn't there for the race.
Well, the race shook out like this. Max Verstappen, 16th win of the season, which is a record. Lewis Hamilton in second, and Charles Leclerc, his 4th podium finish of the season. Behind him, Carlos Sainz in 4th, and then Lando Norris in 5th. Only 2 places off from getting 5 podium finishes in a row.
Wow.
Which, way to go, McLaren. Yeah, he said after the race, once I put it all together, I'll be back on the podium. So, seems like the team was like, all right, nice job, 5th place. And he's like, yeah, I screwed up at a lot of places. So, 6th place, George Russell. 7th place, Daniel Ricciardo. 8th place, Oscar Piastri. 9th place is Alex Albon. And 10th place, Esteban Ocon. Behind them, we've got Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, Nico Hulkenberg, Zhou Guanyu, Valtteri Bottas in 15th. Logan Sargent, technically a DNF, although he apparently was only called in at the last second and couldn't take the checkered flag due to a technical issue that they were managing over the last few laps. And I just feel sorry for the guy. Cannot even finish a race.
Wow, that's wild. I missed that too. That's crazy.
Yeah. Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, Kevin Magnussen, and Sergio Perez, all the DNFs. Hamilton, fastest point, or fastest lap.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, obviously, low fuel loads at the end of races, you tend to sometimes get that.
He was on the medium tires as well.
Yeah. So that would have helped. But that Mercedes has pace. It's
yeah,
upgrades.
At least in this weird thin air.
That's true.
And that is it for the race recap. We are going to take a break, and we will be right back with the news. And we're back. Danny Spooky O'Dwyer.
I was doing some ooh.
I know, yeah.
Witchy boo.
What's your Halloween handle?
My Halloween handle. Is that do I have to change?
You know how everyone changes their names
go
on the socials?
Okay, the easy one was Danny Boudoir because I just had the O sitting there the whole time.
You can't do that. I'm Boo Scanlon.
Oh, but that works better though. Yeah, you're right. Boo Scanlon. Danny, what would you say? Nothing rhymes. Dwyer is like literally. I had no nicknames.
But Danny though.
Danny. It's like Scanny, Fanny, Granny, Tanny. I don't know. Send them in.
Great radio
podcast.
Great radio. Yeah, it'll be timely too. All right, couple quick hits on the news story. Literally, Jalopnik has an article here. F1 television camera helicopter hit by national anthem fireworks at U.S. Grand Prix.
This is the one thing they didn't want to happen.
Please don't fire explosives at aircrafts.
General aviation is dangerous enough as it is without involving fireworks. Come on.
That's true. It's very true, Danny.
So have you seen the like? Is it an Instagram video of this?
There is. Yeah, there's a video that I'll link in the show notes
because it's not like one firework was sent up, one wayward firework went towards the helicopter. It was like the helicopter was sitting in the exact area where all the fireworks were gonna go.
Yes.
So, and it's like pulling back, like, oh no, and then
oh boy,
and then you hear this like ding, where it got rattled.
Yeah, there's like a metallic ping. It doesn't sound real. It sounds like someone ADR'd it in. And it's the internet. Maybe they did.
There's a whole like, oh, we're getting out of here.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. I wonder how dangerous that actually is. I feel like I should know this, but
it's probably not that bad. Like what?
It's probably not good. It's the thing.
It's not. Yeah. Nobody wants to introduce projectiles to things that are flying. In the same way that like a wayward screw doesn't seem like it's that big a deal until Felipe Massa's head is driving towards it at 130 kilometers an hour, and then it becomes a problem. Yeah. So in the same, I guess helicopters aren't these are not going fast, but like at that height, the issue with choppers there is that like choppers can right themselves if you're high enough, right? They can do that whole little thing where they get the rotors turned back, but like
auto rotation.
yes, but if you're that, I remember Ty Root, colleague and friend of friend and ex colleague of ours at CBS. His job before he worked in the games industry was he was a camera op on a chopper for like news reporting.
Like a news chopper, yeah.
And he said the only thing that they took off from an Air Force base every morning. And he said the only problem, he said helicopters are super safe. The only problem he had was that they flew super close to the ground. So if anything happened, you didn't have enough time. And that's obviously...
I don't know. They freak me out, man.
Yeah.
Just ain't natural.
You don't want to see it. You don't want to see it. Yeah.
God made airplanes. Satan made helicopters.
Yeah. Hey, look. As long as... Just don't... If you're flying either, just don't go take mushrooms and don't sleep for 2 days. That's all I'm saying.
What?
Did you not see that Alaska Air story? Did you miss that?
Oh, wait. Is that the guy that tried to crash it?
Yeah.
That's what happened?
Yeah, he was just high. And well, he wasn't really high. He took mushrooms 48 hours beforehand, but he hadn't slept in 48 hours. He literally shouted, "I'm not okay," threw his cans across his headphones across the cockpit and then pulled them. Yeah, he was just like he was just having like a mental
completely
health
out of
episode.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
This has been the Aviation Minute.
Hey, look, planes are just F1 cars turned upside down.
Very true.
They're cousins.
Did you see Driver 61 on YouTube? Is attempting to do it, Danny. He's attempting to drive an F1 car on the ceiling.
Oh my God.
Yes.
The downforce
He goes
challenge.
through. Yeah, he goes through all the technical stuff, how they're going to do it. You know, whether they're going to build a tunnel or they're going to rent a tunnel.
Okay.
Like what car they're going to use, the math. All I need is funding.
Okay. I've seen this before.
Brother.
Do you remember when Tony Hawk did the loop-de-loop on Jackass? That's what this feels like. Where it's like,
yeah, and they also did they did a loop-de-loop with like with rally cars.
okay.
Like that has been done,
Right.
but it's just it's momentum. It's not downforce.
Exactly. It's a different
This
thing.
one, he's going to try to drive it upside down for 5 seconds.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I'll link that in the show notes as well, so you can watch his explanation of how they're going to do it, how they would do it if they got funding.
You got one shot with that. You don't
Don't throw it away.
there's no do-overs. Mom spaghetti. Oh boy.
Best of luck, Driver 61.
Yeah.
Also in the news here, Mercedes technical chief
Is he from
chief technical officer blamed Danny for the late hour.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Mike Elliott has departed the Mercedes F1 team. This is just another quick update here. It does not sound like anything out of the ordinary. His contract came to an end, or is coming to an end later this year, and he has already stepped away from the technical director role in a job swap with James Allison. So he's just decided that now is a good time to step aside and move on. So
Yeah, 10 years at Mercedes and 20 plus in the industry. I think he can sort of
23.
he can bow out after a while. Those are some innings. You know what I mean? It's especially these days. I do wonder if we're going to see more of this with just the number of races as well. You know, this season obviously is the most we've ever had, and
Yeah, although I wonder, Mercedes, they seemed to do the same sort of thing with James Vowles when he was kind of like they transition these people out. They don't just fire them, or not fire them, but they don't just leave, right?
Right.
They seem like, I don't know. It's smart of Mercedes to treat it like this, so that they have like sort of a continuity, right? Like the outgoing person steps aside, but is still with the program, like there for the new person to learn from, I guess. I don't know. Just seems smart. All right, that's all the news. Not a lot going on, especially because we're back-to-back races here. So let's just jump right in to Brazil.
Yes, let's
Danny.
do it. To Autodromo Jose Carlos Pate, Interlagos, as most of us know. You should know, though, Carlos Pate is a famous Brazilian, I should say Sao Paulan driver who unfortunately had his life cut short, not in an F1 car. Although in a particularly rough year, 77, there was a number of deaths actually in F1. I think he passed away.
Hopefully not on November
1st. No,
Danny.
I think it'll come up. But yeah, Tom Price had his crash at the South African Grand Prix that year, and it also, I remember, Marshall was just those were the rough. There are documentaries and movies you can watch about the tail end of that whole era where a lot of that stuff was getting televised, and I think we ended up changing a lot of things. But unfortunately, he did lose his life, and was, I guess, Interlagos has been sort of named after him as a result. He had also won the race, I believe, in 75. I think Fittipaldi had won a number of the races before then, so it's sort of Interlagos came into being during an era where Brazilian drivers were really at the forefront of the sport. And obviously, this happened again later with Ayrton Senna, and we've obviously had Brazilian drivers, since then and prior that have also been at the forefront of the sport. But I mentioned Carlos and Emerson to sort of just explain, I guess, the time in which this circuit came in, because we think about Interlagos as like this foundational F1 circuit. It's actually, quite a bit older on the calendar when you compare it to things like Silverstone or, Spa or things like that, or a lot of the European ones especially. And when it was actually built, a lot of the elements of it were taken. It was kind of like a Frankentrack, like Austin. There was a couple of elements like Brooklands in the UK, some of the turns taken from there. Apparently the Roosevelt Raceway, there were F1 race. I'm not sure if even F1 race on that, but that had some elements taken and put into Interlagos as well, which is funny because Interlagos seems like one of these incredibly unique tracks. Like, it was built in Sao Paulo in this sort of like a hillside with a bowl on the inside, and you have this incredible like start-finish straight, which is at the top of a hill. Apparently the place to get seats here is in Grandstand A, which is basically the end of Sector 3, right? When the start-finish, at the start of the start-finish straight. Because not only can you see the straight, but you also see down the hill, and you can see loads. You can see that whole like little sort of arena in the middle of Interlagos as well. There, or Grandstand M, which is at the end of that start-finish straight, which is where the appropriately named Senna S's are. I don't know if they're named that because Senna did a great overtake there. I don't know if they're named that because Senna starts with S. I choose to believe they're named that because when he eventually won Interlagos, I believe that is where his car stopped, where they had to pull him out because his arms were completely like locked. Do you remember? I think he was stuck in 6th gear for the last 5 or 6 laps or something.
Right,
and,
so you just had to muscle it around.
Yeah, and he was just like
an hour
they
or whatever.
pulled him out of the car as a winner of that race. Which again, I think, considering the Brazilian champions they'd had and the Brazilian winners of Interlagos they'd had in the 70s, I think there was a bit of a gap there, and that was obviously super important to them. It's 4.3 kilometers long, 2.7 miles, incredible atmosphere. It's not a particularly affluent part of the city, so you tend to get like, it has this sort of like real soccer stadium vibe to it. I've always sort of accompanied it to, where I don't know, that I'm guessing the tickets to it now are incredibly expensive, but like it always had this feeling when you watched it in the 90s that it was sort of like the everyman's F1 race. Like, people were on top of like buildings nearby watching the race. You know what I mean? Like that type of vibe to it. It's in terms of the track itself, it's incredibly unique. It has 2 straights. It has the main one on the start finish straight, which actually happens, the DRS opens before a turn, which we tend not to have, but this is such an interesting, it's like kind of uphill and cambered, so they have enough downforce where they don't mind that they open up the DRS as they're turning. the Senna S's on turns 1 and 2, and then exiting 3 down to turn 4, you have another straight. So there's an overtaking opportunity there as well. And then just like a really cool, like little go-kart track basically stuck in the middle of this, this circuit. It also has had like loads of moments this for years before Abu Dhabi was built, before we were racing there. Yas Marina, this was growing up for me at least. This is where the F1 season ended, so that we had loads of fantastic race season-ending races here. The one that we were most recently talking about was Hamilton's eventual win the year the Crashgate happened, where it looked like Massa had won the championship until about 4 seconds later, and then Timo Glock sort of had a bit of grip trouble on turn 13, and Hamilton ended up winning it. So it's just, it's a really special track. If this is your first time watching Interlagos, it's one of those ones we talk about where the camera angles really will let you know where the track is. Like you'll learn this one by watching it on television. Super supporters in Brazil, a fun track, and often leads to interesting races. We've had weird weather here before as well. It's a part of the world that tends to get a rain shower here and there. So I'm excited to hear what Drew has to say next.
Yeah. Before we get to the weather, I love this track for how much character it has. I think every sector has its own character, and it's just. It's comprehensible to me in a way that a lot of other tracks aren't. Like the first sector, you got the twisty S's, right? And then in the second sector, it's these tight turns where people can attempt crazy moves like Lewis Hamilton on Alex Albon.
Oh no!
Yeah, and then sector 3 is this like crazy multi-apex, gigantic, like swooping uphill climb to the start-finish straight. It's just, it's one of those places that, like you said, Danny, just has a lot of history to it, and you never really know what you're going to get.
Yeah, and you mentioned the height thing there. I think what happens in F1 tracks a lot of the time is, unless it's like, I don't know, something like Austria where like the helicopter shots are so obvious, or Spa where like it's so obvious that you're going downhill here and you can sort of anticipate that you're probably going up here. The sectors here are so obviously like sector 1 is you are going downhill. Sector 2 is you are in the like gully of the hill. And sector 3 is you are climbing back out of the, like it's so obvious by the shapes of the turns. And you also alluded to that, you know, that this weird, the sector 2 in a way just feels like when we look at these F1 maps, if you've never gone to like F1's website or just Googled like circuits and you see where all the turn numbers are, Interlagos is a stadium that is 15 turns. It could have 10 turns. It could have 30 turns. The little section in sector 2 especially has so many multi-apex turns that it is like impossible to tell which line you should properly be taking, and that's why you end up in these like super interesting go-kart like sort of like you're ahead, I'm ahead moments where is somebody going to close the door. And drivers really like it here, I think, for that reason. There's just a lot going on, like an uphill turn with a camber and like a downhill like where's the grip? Is it on the front right? Is it on the rear left? Like where am I holding onto the power here? And I think it's fun for the drivers, but also it leads to really interesting races, and it's just a gorgeous stadium to look at. Like there's so many F1 tracks that I think if you lost one of these, I would feel less connected to the sport. Interlagos is like top 3 for me. Like it's just there's something about it that feels so grassroots and like important. And we had I remember in previous years, Drew, you talking a lot about they were trying to move it, right? Because presumably this is a money thing, right? Trying to get it out of this part of Sao Paulo, which, you know, and there's a lot of like political, I'm sure we have Brazilian listeners who'll tell you a lot about, and I've never been there. I know you've filmed down there and stuff, and you've talked about the culture and stuff, but I know that there's a lot of like intercity, sort of like Rio versus Sao Paulo and that type of thing, and where the money is and where it isn't. And I think like this is such an important race to F1, and it's obviously really important to sort of Sao Paulans as well, that it'd be a real shame if we lost it. And it seemed like we might a couple of years again, and I'm glad that it's still here in 2023.
Yeah, I was looking at the calendar. I think my top 4 of like these are F1's tracks are this one, Monaco, Silverstone, and Spa.
I might say the same. My
A lot of the tracks in there I like, but like those just seem
like foundational,
like the historical foundation.
My 5th would be Suzuka, I think. Although it's hard though because Monza's right there. Oh god, it's hard.
Yeah.
But from the global part of the sport that makes it feel really special to me, I think Interlagos and Suzuka in particular feel very foundational that way. You know, we lost those, it'd be like losing Blanca and E Honda.
I know, yeah. When you're cycling through the courses in like, you know, a Super Nintendo F1 game, you want to see that, you know, bounce around all the globe.
Brazilian flag might be the best flag in like 16-bit graphics. Brazilian flag might be the best flag. It just looks cool. It's got that.
Yeah, it does look cool. All right, weather, Danny. It's going to be a hot one. 85 degrees on sprint day, qualifying day is Friday.
Right.
Because this is the final sprint of the season. We're looking at 85 degrees Fahrenheit or 29 Celsius. Ooh. Precipitation at qualifying time, 67%. Yes. A nice spike right around qualifying time.
Beautiful.
No precip. Well, okay, 4% scheduled for the sprint day. Cooler temps as well. We're looking at 77 Fahrenheit or 25 Celsius.
Oh, that's cool.
And even cooler on race day. Let's see, 2 p.m. local, 69 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees Celsius. Boy, it really cools off, and only 2% chance of precipitation. But as you said, Danny, it's sort of one of those microclimate areas. A lot of strange convective action.
Yeah.
So anything can happen.
2 things to say about that. One, very cool. I mean, the sprint, one of the most interesting things we've learned about the sprint weekend is that they just don't have enough practice time to really figure out what they should do on race day. And I think the changing climate is only going to exacerbate that. Second of which, I'm very interested to see what the next 2 races are going to do for tires, because we have a relatively cool Interlagos, which is one thing. This Vegas race, man.
Oh yeah.
Like if I've camped out in the high desert in the Mojave a lot over the past couple of years. Vegas being a night race in November, like it's going to be colder than it's been with even with rain. Like it's a different type of cold. Like I wonder what it's going to be like on a road surface, like asphalt with like nighttime Mojave temps. Is Vegas going to be like, I don't know what happens to tires then.
Yeah.
Do they just never get into their their windows? Right. What's going to happen?
Is it going to be like ice?
Yeah.
Remember when it was like 5 years ago or something, they were doing testing in Barcelona and it snowed.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that. Yes.
Yeah.
It was like a complete bust. Man, did you see there was a fire at the Formula E testing?
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah, they canceled that day. I never followed up on it.
Yeah, it reminds me of the time they were going to do, I think it was the beginning of Moto E, the electric
I haven't heard about that
MotoGP series.
Yeah.
And like right before their first event, a fire like took out all of the bikes.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of Lime scooters like parked at a charging station.
Batteries are scary, man.
Yeah. Take out your do you have an what's it called? E-luggage? Do you ever hear of that thing where they're like, if you're checking your e-bag, take out your e-battery.
Oh, like an integrated USB battery for your luggage?
For your luggage, yeah. They're all about
keep that separate,
take that
bro.
shit out, man. Take that shit. It's on a Samsung Galaxy S. It could explode at any moment.
Well, the Drivers' Championship could explode at any moment, at least in places that aren't first, because Max Verstappen has 491 points. Sergio Perez, though, is in second with 240. Lewis Hamilton in third with 220. There's a lot of racing still to go, folks. Carlos Sainz is in fourth with 183, tied with Fernando Alonso.
Ooh, interesting.
Yes. Lando Norris in sixth with 169.
Nice. All right.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Charles Leclerc is in seventh with 166. That is a close battle as well. George Russell in eighth with 151. And then a bit of a jump down to Oscar Piastri in 9th with 87. Pierre Gasly's in 10th with 56. Lance Stroll has 53. Esteban Ocon with 45. Alex Albon with 27. Valtteri Bottas in 14th place with 10 points. Nico Hulkenberg's in 15th with 9. Then we got Tsunoda with 8. Ricardo and Zhou with 6. Magnussen with 3. Lawson with 2. Sargent with 1. And Nick DeVries with 0. I'm finally getting the hang of Zhou Guanyu. Just saying his
name?
Surname. Yes, even though it is listed first.
Okay.
Constructor standings, Red Bull Racing has secured it with 731 points. Mercedes is in second with 371. Ferrari is in third with 349. McLaren in fourth with 256. Aston Martin in fifth with 236. Alpine's in sixth with 101. Williams has 28 points. Alpha Tauri and Alfa Romeo are tied. The Alphas. Gene Haas team in 10th with 12. Sorry, the Alphas have 16 points. If you would like to join the leaderboards yourself, you can do so in our Fantasy League. You can join using the links in the show notes. From the Mexico City Grand Prix, the podium, fantasy podium looks like this. In third place, Sorry Carlos. In second place, Logie Sarge's Bear. Is that a Yogi Bear?
It must be. Like
I can't tell. And in first place, I'm wheelie trying.
Oh, aren't we all?
Well, you tried and you succeeded. But overall, the standings look like this. In third place, jumping up, I think, the standings. Third place, I has no idea. And then sticking in second and first, paying the Stroll toll and Horner to the max. You can send us an email if you want, shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or fn.cool/emails. We haven't read so many in a while because of this triple header. But we still will have some opportunities before the end of the season. You can also hit us up on the socials using the links in the show notes. That's us around the internet. Should we take it around the world, Danny?
Let's race around the world. Hey, yeah.
We got those Craftsman trucks at the Phoenix Raceway in Avondale, Arizona for the Craftsman 150.
Beautiful.
The NASCAR Xfinity Series. Race has already happened. I don't know what is up with my...
Wow, who won?
What is up with my calendar here? There is one still left. It is also this weekend. The Phoenix Raceway, Avondale, Arizona. The NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship. Don't you know? The World Endurance Championship is at the Bahrain International Circuit for the 8 hours of Bahrain in Sakhir. Super GT is at Mobility Resort Motegi.
Mobility Resort.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
That's where you go to have like a good time having some mobility.
Yeah.
Resort, like Wii Sports Resort, but mobility resort. Okay.
I disavow that. It will always be in my heart. Twin Ring Motegi.
Did they rename it? Is that what happened? Twin
Yes.
Ring? Oh,
Yeah.
God. Mobility came in and big mobility.
Yeah.
With their money.
It is in Motegi in the Haga district, Tochigi Prefecture.
Ooh.
For everyone keeping score at home.
Oh, that's me.
And we got NASCAR.
Oh, my. Xfinity.
Also in Phoenix.
Beautiful.
For the NASCAR Cup Series Championship. Do we not name these anymore?
Nope. No more sponsors. Motegi took them all. Mobility was going to sponsor us, and then they were like, Phoenix is too flat.
And we've got Formula One. Maybe you've heard of it. The sprint weekend kicks off Friday, November 3rd. Free practice blank. Because there's only one.
Free practice.
Free practice. 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2, followed by qualifying at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, also on ESPN2. Saturday, November 4th, the shootout is at 10 a.m. on ESPN2, followed by the sprint at 2:30 p.m. on ESPN Nears. And Sunday, everyone, November 5th, the race, 12 p.m. noon Eastern Time on ESPN2. The Deuce.
So handy. 3 races in a row that just feel like they're at an easy to digest hour. And then Vegas comes along and I just do it at nighttime on a Saturday because whatever.
Whatever. Yeah, and that's what's going on this weekend. What has been going on on this day?
Oh, in days
history, Danny.
Days of yore, Drew Scanlon. On November 1st. Happy November to everyone. We take it back to first 1986 and then 1988. The year I was born, 86, after losing out on the title after a puncture put him out of the race in Australia in 1986. Nigel Mansell was once again in contention for the championship in 1987. His Williams teammate and title rival, Nelson Piquet, was 12 points ahead of Mansell going into the penultimate round at Suzuka on this day. Sadly for Nigel, a big crash on this day in practice ruled him out of the race, handing the title to Piquet. Now, if you think that is the most depressing title loss that I'm going to read out on today's podcast, you'd be mistaken. For all his talent, Michael Schumacher was not above the occasional lapse in concentration. Today in 1998, Schumi stalled his Ferrari while on pole for a championship showdown with Mika Hakkinen at the final round at Suzuka. He had to start from the back of the grid, and Hakkinen drove off to win the race and his first driver's title. Kind of a damp squib that final race in Suzuka. Jarno Trulli actually stalled first from like 16th or something and forced them to do the start again. And then Schumi put it into gear and stalled and got sent to the back. Yep.
Man.
Yep. Maybe the worst. No, actually, the crash with Coulthard there is, and then there's the other crash with Hakkinen. So I don't know. Schumi's got a couple of, for all of his...
Oh, I thought you were going to say the worst championship decider race.
It might be, though, because at least there's...
Danny, 2021, buddy. It's right there.
Oh, no, you're right. Oh.
You know, I was thinking just the other day, I don't know if we ever properly commended you because I remember the pre-race show for that race. you saying, I just hope it doesn't end in a stupid way.
Right. You're right. I was just hoping.
Which is
right.
And like I knew exactly what you meant because the whole season felt like that.
It did. It was too, what it felt very political. It felt very, which side are you on, right? The crash at Silverstone, the crash at in Saudi Arabia. There was so many of these moments where you had to like pick a side, and then I think we all felt going into Yas Marina that year that we just wanted the race to be won on merit. Like clearly, both of these drivers were doing so well, and kind of either of them deserved to win it. And like it'd be great if Max won, because it would have been the first time he won. Lewis obviously won so many, but it was great for Lewis because he's fought so hard. And then, Jesus Christ. I don't think I've ever recovered.
I'm sorry to bring that up. Speaking of Halloween, the specter of
exactly
2021.
Ghosts of Formula One championships. Wait, that's Christmas thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
I get confused sometimes.
Danny, final thoughts ahead of Brazil?
I'm going to say the same thing. I feel like a broken record whenever we get to this stage of the season. I'm always saying, like, there's only a couple of races left. I always just enjoy them for what they are. And I think this is kind of a byproduct of maybe the year we've had as well, as it has kind of felt like it's been over for a little while. Especially if you watch other sports, F1 really feels like it's closing now because you've got, the World Series is kind of doing the same thing. But then if you're watching soccer and football, it feels like they're kind of getting up to speed at this stage. Whereas F1 is definitely quieting down. I do think the Perez-Ricciardo thing, as much as like narratives are sort of made up in F1 for the viewer's sake, I genuinely do think, just considering how Red Bull in particular have managed their drivers in the past at the end of a season, I think this might be interesting. I think if Ricciardo puts in like 2 more races that are strong and Perez buckles under the pressure, we might we might see that happen.
I would be very surprised if that happened. I think more likely is like a mid-season next year.
Yeah,
kind of a swap if Paris doesn't turn it around and Ricciardo keeps being good.
The big reason I think it might not is because I think they don't want to rustle the Verstappen situation, the driver number one situation. I mean, I don't think Ricciardo was a driver number one at Red Bull, but I do think the last time Verstappen had that fight was when Danny was there. So
it's true.
You know.
Yeah, I guess we discussed that in the past. Like, do you want to kill the golden goose?
Right. Or have a, you know, Perez is almost perfect for them. He just needs to be a less bad second driver, and he's not really doing that at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. Interlagos is a great race. I'm very excited for Vegas, and Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird.
Is a fun one, you know, as well.
Yeah. Well, if you would like to support the show and get access to all of our bonus episodes, the ad-free version of the podcast, and the official Shift F1 Discord, you can do so over at patreon.com/shiftf1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all next week.